We call this grandma's medicine across the country, across the world. And something happened where like, yes, it's gained in popularity. Michael Phelps and God, Usher had a video preparing for the Super Bowl, his halftime
Right.
show recently, and in it he's getting sliding cupping. Good technique too. I like that. I approve. But cupping is something that's so easy at home now. We don't even need the fire. We have devices that are, they're either suction pumps or they're silicone where you just squeeze. And removing the fire, which is the most dangerous part of the whole procedure, makes it so easy to do at home, so safe. And why don't we return that therapy back to the hands of the families that have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years? And when I say thousands of years, we're at least 5,000 years old that we have some mention.
Wow.
What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't, and we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hersh Redpun, and if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes.
I am talking with Dr. Tom Ingegno.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. And by the way, I'm glad you commented on how beautifully I pronounced your name. Because
go ahead.
That is just one of those things. It's nice to hear, right? It would be good if we did
everyone murders it.
But
everyone murders it, and I'm so used to it. And I'll tell you a real short story. I was teaching at a school in New York, an acupuncture school, and they dropped the E out of the middle, and it almost made the name look Vietnamese. Mm-hmm. Like it was ING space GNO, which that sounds Vietnamese in my head. And when I stood up to
just no, that's pronounced no.
Yeah,
Dr. No.
Dr. No. When I stood up and they saw me teaching, they were confused.
Yeah. So it does matter.
It definitely does.
It does matter. But
the pronunciation is very Italian.
And we're going to talk about acupuncture today. We're going to talk about your book, your cupping book, the cupping book. We're going to touch on a lot of these things. But tell me what Charm City means.
Yes. So Charm City Integrative Health is my fourth clinic in Maryland. So originally I'm from New York. I treated out of 2 clinics there, renting space. When I moved to Maryland, I kept trying to expand and grow, and Charm City is the nicer moniker that they give to Baltimore.
Right.
And, you'll see businesses of all sorts named Charm City. And I wanted to tie myself to the city because that's, the community we serve. So we picked Charm City Integrative Health, and especially with all those buzzwords going out there like wellness and, functional, and, to find something that really represented what we do. In my head, integrative is the seaming together all of those different services, whether they're Western or they're Eastern and, modern or old, and making those play nice together for the best outcomes for your patients.
Yeah, and it does. And it just happens to be the luck of the draw that you're in Charm City, because Big Apple acupuncture probably would not have the same.
I'm sure there's 1,000 of them too. You know,
and you know what that sign looks like? It's one of those white. It's just a white sign. It's got a crack in it. There's a hole in it. It's part of the apples just missing, not eaten like you would do in an image, but it's just missing. And it's Big Apple, and probably acupuncture is not in the same font.
No. And unfortunately they probably use, I believe the font is called Chinese takeout, and it's very stereotypical. Right. It's like, it's so bad. I remember, like, I've been doing this for 23 years. All of us were either using that one, which is like racist, or papyrus, which is like this old, like the font looks ripped. And I used it myself. I mean, I used the papyrus one, and now I'm telling on myself here. But
it's better for you to be selling heroes, than sandwiches, which I'm not sure if always thought it was hero, and then you hear people say gyro.
So that's the souvlaki. That's the Greek gyro.
Right.
Yeah.
Hero,
But yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, it's funny because heroes in New York, subs down here, they're very regional what they call them, And I moved down here and I asked for a chicken parm hero, and the guy was like, "Wait, you want gyro meat on a chicken parm?" Like I blew his mind. He could not follow me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'll translate for you. But like I'm like, these words are interchangeable, man. But
Yeah. Well, okay. But let's talk a little bit about let's talk about why you got into what you're doing. I think that's interesting.
The origin story, huh?
Yeah.
So I love telling
Excuse
this.
me, Tom.
Go ahead.
The Tom Ingegno origin story.
Look at that. Now you're going to be saying you'll never forget my last name.
No, never.
And I have to say, I love that Google translated to skillful. So I'm like, oh, cool. But yeah, my grandfather was a pharmacist, and I was always, even at a young age, like, oh, I'm going to go into medicine. I'm going to do something like that. My grandfather was counting out pills. Back in the day, you had to count them out manually, and they were about $5 a piece. And he looks at me and he goes, "Look, this guy's a day laborer. He's got to take 3 of these every day for the rest of his life. Do you know how expensive that is?" And then he looked at me and he said, "There's got to be a better way, and I'm looking for you to find it." Wow. And that kind of got buried in my subconsciousness. And when I was pre-med, and I was sitting in a biology class, and that image came back to me, and I was like, whoa. Like my grandfather had already passed when I was in high school, and it was really like sitting with me. And through a course of events that I'll call serendipitous, my junior year, I got a postcard in the mail for an open house in an acupuncture school. And 2 weeks later, when that open house happened, I was signed up for that program and didn't look back, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to think that I'm figuring out a way where we're not dumping chemicals into somebody, we're not cutting them open, and we're employing the innate healing potential. Wow, that sounds really arrogant.
Yeah.
Of the patient to help them get them where they want to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Which also, we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the patients that you've been seeing recently. On this show, we were born, so to speak, in the age of COVID. I started this show because I wanted to talk to more people. I felt super isolated, and then we started to talk about all kinds of things on this show. Some of them were COVID related. Some of them were not. But in your case, at your practice, COVID had an impact on what people were coming to see you for, right?
Oh, absolutely. Before COVID, I got to say, we were doing okay. It wasn't always smooth sailing. Budgets were tight. Getting people through the door was, hey, what are you guys doing? I don't really get it. COVID hit. And the first people to come back to us were the Western medical professionals, right? The ones that were on the front lines, the ones at the hospitals that were stressed out and unfortunately dealing with the majority of the mess. After that, there seemed to be a real shift at least in Baltimore, and I would say nationally too, because the number of articles that people are asking me to comment on are going through the roof as well. But the idea that, the focus is on WellCare a little bit more. How do I stay up and running? How do I keep myself healthy, right? None of us want to go through that again, but it was an eye-opener for a lot of people. Hey, there's really no one that's going to be taking care of my health the way that I would. And with that, people started to click and understand that, like, our office, yes, we'll help you get back to where you want to be if you have an injury or an illness. But the real goal, the real thing that a lot of our services excel at is keeping you up and running, keeping your immune system functioning, keeping the blood flowing, keeping the muscles loose. All of these things that are going to keep you healthy in the long run. You're investing in long-term health.
And is there an extent to which acupuncture can no longer, help? In other words, is there a point at which you say, look, this is beyond the scope of what acupuncture can address?
Well, it's pretty interesting because, one, yes, you're absolutely right. There's a time and a place for acupuncture. In the West here, it's almost like I've been given a smaller room to run than say, especially in China, where Western medicine and Eastern medicine are practiced interchangeably. Most medical doctors practice acupuncture, Chinese herbal medicine, these things. I know of practitioners here that were trained in China who will give herbs for everything from cancer to the very severe diagnoses. Mm-hmm. Our clinic is going to play more of a supportive role in that. We don't want to be the lead if we're treating something like cancer. That is your oncologist. That is that team that's around it. We're there to support you as you go through it. So definitely, I don't want to ever promote any procedure, intervention, therapy, modality as the great panacea, right? Nothing cures everything. Nothing works for everybody. But to have the options there to say, hey, would this work for me now? How can I include this in the team that I'm putting together to manage something critical? I think acupuncture has a role in that place.
Yeah. Yeah. And also to touch on COVID again,
mm-hmm.
was it during COVID that you started working on the cupping book?
Yeah. So I actually had that about 70% done. And then the governor lifted the stay-at-home mandate for non-critical care, right? We got a mandate that said urgent care only. And it left us kind of in a lurch because mandates are meant to be like a one-pager, but they don't define a lot. So I have a friend of mine, and I refer a lot of chiropractic patients to her. She's a chiropractor up the street. She stayed open. And I said, well, wasn't it urgent care? And she said, yeah, but who am I to decide what's urgent or not? And I said, that's great. And I said, how many would you see a day? She go, 1 or 2. I go, I can't even open the clinic for 1 or 2 patients. It's not, it does, I'll spend more than I make. But when we reopened, I had to put the book down because of the influx of people. People were looking for things to do. People were looking for ways to take care of themselves. So it kind of got backseated for, God, what is it, 2024 now, until last year when I finally wrapped it up.
Yeah. And tell the audience a little bit about the book and your kind of adventure in creating it.
Yeah. So I attribute a lot of this book to my mentor. I think I wouldn't be where I am clinically or much of anything professionally had it not been for my mentor. And one of the things my mentor did was he always wanted to make things practical. So yes, you have to understand the theory. You have to understand the background. At a practitioner level, everything has to be in your head as well as in your hands. You have to have the skill to do it too. Cupping is one of these things that, is meant to be so straightforward, right? We call this grandma's medicine across the country, across the world. And something happened where, yes, it's gained in popularity. Michael Phelps and God, Usher had a video preparing for the Super Bowl, his halftime show recently. And in it, he's getting sliding cupping. Good technique too. I like that. I approve. But cupping is something that's so easy at home now. We don't even need the fire. We have devices that are, they're either suction pumps or they're silicone where you just squeeze. And removing the fire, which is the most dangerous part of the whole procedure, makes it so easy to do at home, so safe. And why don't we return that therapy back to the hands of the families that have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years? And when I say thousands of years, we're at least 5,000 years old that we have some mention.
Wow. Yeah. Now, outside of your practice, what really kind of gets you jazzed? What is a go-to activity or something fun that you
So I'm gonna blame my mentor for this one. He was also like, you got to let everything that you're doing really like embody. You have to embody that. You have to live and breathe that. Mm-hmm. Right. So I mentioned that East Asian medicine isn't just acupuncture, right? We talk about herbal medicine. We talk about meditation. We talk about breathing exercises, qigong, martial arts, especially Tai Chi, which is a martial qigong breathing exercise, as well as a fighting system. So when I'm not doing that, I tend to nerd out and read a lot because you can't get, even with 23 years experience, 3.5 years for my master's, another 1.5 years for the doctorate, you can't learn thousands of years of this medicine. And the school wants to get you up and proficient, but it is so wide of a field that every time I turn my head, I'm learning something I've never seen before. Not only like an awareness of it, it's wow, that's weird. I don't know anything about that. So I really nerd out. Like this morning, I fell into a little bit of a rabbit hole because I was on another podcast where somebody mentioned, when we translate it into English, we call it slapping therapy. And it has some big controversy about it because the person that kind of has been promoting it lately is making what I would consider risky and partially insane claims. But there is some benefit to actually tapping your skin. It sounds worse when we call it slapping therapy, but I spent an hour reading about that online. Yeah, so I end up just nerding out, you know.
Well, that's good though. You're nerding out, but you're not tuning out. You're kind of tuning in just on a different level. When you said slapping therapy, it conjured the videos that I see on Instagram of, big, heavy, gigantic men and women smacking each other in the face. And I wondered for a moment, Tom, is that therapeutic? Is that what they're really doing? Are they just
maybe the person slapping is working on some anger management, but receiving side, I don't believe is therapeutic. Yeah. I've seen some people go down from that, and I don't want to be on the receiving end.
The weak ones go down.
Yeah.
But so you mentioned that it's that the field of acupuncture is so broad, given its really rich and deep history. Are there approaches or techniques that you would say you specialize in?
Yeah. So it's funny, and I'll relate this to martial arts because that's a little bit easier for some people, right? We have this world of martial arts, and then we have countries. We go, Chinese kung fu, Japanese karate, jujitsu, these things. And then even within those systems, there's subsystems. Like, I classically studied Xing Yi, which is actually 5-element boxing, and there's 5 elements in acupuncture. So it kind of is like this corollary through culture, but there's different systems. The one Hebei is different than the one over here. So when we talk about acupuncture, I went to a traditional Chinese medicine school, which is kind of the most common you'll find in the US. And even then, there's family systems and subsystems within that we get to pick up and learn through the program. But my mentor specialized in systems, specifically Japanese meridian therapy. And then if we want to get even weirder, lineages under certain families. So if we're going to be super technical, I tend to practice a Japanese meridian therapy system as approached by the Akeda family. and no one will know what that means. Yeah. Except Akeda's family. No. And for Americans, the broad thing is, yes, we're putting in needles to help your system. Right. Japanese systems from the exterior, and this is kind of the oversimplification of things, is fewer needles, milder stimulation, right? It tends to fit the Western palate a little bit more than, say, a more aggressive style with more needles and stronger stimulation.
Yeah. So it looks a little less like Hellraiser.
Yeah.
The Hellraiser character. Yeah. I was going to say that I specialize in a sub, what do you call it? A subcategory, a subcategory of slapping therapy, which I call flinching, which is just where you stimulate yourself only by jerking your head to one side or another, but it's very dangerous. People have often dislocated or
definitely pull the muscle or something. So
I don't recommend people do it without having been trained. I do have, as kind of a side hustle, a little training dojo that I have for flinch therapy, but it's not for everyone.
I gotcha. Yeah, set up a little home gym in your garage and
that's it. But you get hit a lot less.
You do.
That's the thing. And there are some people that, like just as vegans don't want to eat meat, there are people that just don't want to get slapped.
I think that's probably more the rule than the exception there.
Yeah. Now, you have a podcast.
Yeah.
As well, with a partner.
Yes.
Tell the audience a little bit about your podcast.
So Irreverent Health is the name of our podcast. And it oddly came out of like COVID time as well. We were a little late on the uptake, but we found that, like in to speak to the isolation of it all, hey, we couldn't go out. We were like kind of hopping on Zoom calls all the time just to socialize. And we just started talking about weird health stuff. So my friend Matt Hampton, he's in the digital marketing world now, and he's looking to change things up. And he'd been reading all the biohacking books and all the we're kind of techie. So if within arm's reach, I probably have about 15 weird little devices. But he's the same build, right? So we geek out on reading deep on like red light therapy and stuff like that. So we just started talking about it one day, and he's like, why don't I just hit record? Mm-hmm. And then 2 weeks later, we were like, all right, we're going to do this as a thing. Okay. And we recorded, I think we're over 70 episodes now. And we've just recently launched like 20 of them. So we kind of did the legwork before we actually made anything live. And a couple of our friends who do also have podcasts are like, what are you waiting for? And I think some of it was, we're too busy with our prime gigs. And then secondarily, I think there's some of us going like, oh, we don't, if we let this out and it goes bad, like what happens, but so far, we're slowly but surely gaining an audience. I don't know how organic we're supposed to let it happen or how much we're supposed to drive it, but we're really just throwing it up there because we have a great time. We've had on some fun guests. And, there's times that sometimes we just hit record and just BS about whatever we read about that day, so it's a good time for us.
What I've learned from having a couple of podcasts now is that the only rule, the golden rule, the only real one that matters is sustainability, is that it's, if you're trying to accomplish something else or something specific, okay, there's different strategies. There's a ton of them.
Yeah.
I just got back from PodFest, from the festival in Orlando. And, every time I go there, I learn incredible amounts of stuff that I hadn't even thought of, strategies and all the whys and wherefores of podcasting. But basically, the thing is that if you just keep doing it, if you are doing it, it's best to do it with some regularity. But I have friends that don't have a schedule, don't have a release schedule, and their podcast is very, very successful.
That's great.
So if it comes from the heart and it really gets you excited, but you keep doing it just because that it's going to get better and it's going to be more fulfilling, it's going to be that much more special. But so many people just give up, quit, stop doing it. They feel overwhelmed, but that's because they're putting the pressure on themselves to deliver 1 episode a week, 2 episodes a week, whatever they feel they need to do. How many episodes a season? Yeah. We forget that this is really an art form that we can do with it whatever we want. We can grow it, do it however we want, be as funny as we want. That's why Truth Tastes Funny has, and we're actually at 75 episodes.
Oh, great.
Launched. And I feel like, I have a friend has a podcast called Respect the Process about filmmaking, Jordan Brady. He's got to be in the 100, 500, 600, maybe I'm even underplaying, but keep doing it. You keep doing it. And so, I just throw that out there because I think you guys have a good kind of personality mix, and it's fun. And, there's always something to be learned from listening to people share.
And that's why I love doing these, because, to be on everybody else's and see, their recipe. And you just dropped some real sagely advice, because the first handful of episodes we did, our first one is on something called orgasmic meditation. And that one, like, let's pick, like sex sells, let's pick something controversial, let's hit that. And then we started talking about some of the services that I do at the office, and we were talking about them very clinically, and it wasn't us, it's not who I am even in clinic when I talk about the service. Right. So we're like, oh, this is 600 to 680 hertz. It's like, no one cares about that. No one cares about that. How's it going to make me feel? Why are we doing it? Right. And when we kind of like said, all right, let's just have the conversation. Let's say this is what we want to talk about and just go. It feels so much more organic, and that's why I think people listen to podcasts is
Yeah.
that like, well, I don't know what I'm going to get, right? If we curse, we don't have to go back and bleep that out. Matt and I did a 420 episode, and by the end of it, I don't even remember what happened. Yeah, like I'm pretty sure he asked me a question, and I went, "Yeah," and then I just kind of stared off. So it was, it wasn't really a back and forth.
Yeah, which is great. I think when you start out doing podcasts, you don't realize that there's essentially three parties. There's you. Mm-hmm. And who your guest is, let's say, in your case, your co-host, but let's say I have a guest, you. So it's me, you, and the audience. And if I'm just starting, I don't either even have an audience or I don't know who they are. What I learned from being a DJ in college radio was that you act as if you have that person, or know one or two friends who are listening, and you kind of personify those people for yourself so that you have this idea in your head of who you're talking to, and then you talk to them, and then people like that start to be attracted to it, and they start to actually be there listening. So you never know when you start.
That's great too. Yeah, and I think maybe they hear your personality come through, and then they say, "Oh no, I like this person," or "I don't," and they move on if they don't.
Yeah. They either like the sound of your voice or they don't. So do you, when you're doing acupuncture, when you're treating people, do you speak to them, talk them through it?
I have gotten told I talk too much, and part of it is I feel like part of my job, and this is another reason why I'm doing podcasts. It's not just to promote the book, but I feel like the level of acupuncture in this country, and it's not the practitioner's fault, but I don't feel like they're doing the best job at translating what they're doing. Right now, some of that may be language barriers. If you're seeing an Asian practitioner that might not have a grasp on the English language, you're going to get maybe some of the classical terms in English, and that doesn't translate so well. But I really feel like a lot of the Western trained practitioners, at least the native speakers, need to step up their game. And this is not a slam at them, but like if I start talking about chi and oh, your liver excess, and those are things that mean something within the system, but to you as the patient laying there on the table, how's that going to help my headache?
Yeah.
Right. So we need to be able to translate that and not dilute the medicine, but say it in a way that people can understand. So normally my opening statement with a new patient is, look, I'm going to tell you everything I do. If it gets to be too much, tell me to shut up. It's your treatment. Yeah, I'm not gonna, if you just want to lay here and relax, that's great. And they go one of two ways. It's, I don't need you to explain anything, or no, I want to know what's going on.
That's right.
And those ones that I know what's going on, those tend to be my patients, right? Those are the ones that stick around.
Yeah. They want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ones
who please tell me everything.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes that personality type is a difficult customer because they want to know everything before they buy your service.
Yeah.
And the questions can be endless. But that said, it's good to know different personality types. Someone comes in and you might right away pick up on their body language and the way they talk and be like, okay, this person wants me to shut up. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear anything. So before we let Dr. Tom Ingegno go, are there some tips that you would like to provide our listeners in dealing with stress, in dealing with sustained good health?
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to share?
Oh God. Wow. There's so much within that world, right? And I'm trying to get into that more, to bring it forward. What comes from the traditional realm? How do we live better? The number one thing that I'm going to say, and I've been meditating now for, I think the first book I read on it, I was still in high school. So we're well over, 25 years now, is develop a meditation practice. And it doesn't have to be long. A minute or two a day. If that's all you can do, don't worry. Eventually that'll build. But the consistency there's so much research on meditation and just managing stress, right? We're living in a world now that moves faster than I believe we were designed to handle, right? And the technology is just getting crazier and crazier, and the news is scarier and scarier. And meditation at least pulls you back into that rest and digest response, even if it's just for a fleeting second. And you don't have to follow the technique I do. You don't have to find a monk on a mountaintop. You can watch a YouTube video, just sit quietly with your eyes closed and concentrate on your breathing, whatever works for you, but setting that still point. And you might have to do that quite a bit before you get comfortable with it. But I say I've been practicing, or I've been trying to meditate for 25 years. I'm still not good at it, but I do see the improvements in my life, but it took a long time. The other thing is, don't look at healthcare as I go to the doctor when I'm injured or when I'm sick. Look at healthcare as the times you go into the gym, the food you eat, those walks you take, the relationships you form with friends and family, and then look at services that you like, right? So if you don't like acupuncture, well, maybe you like massage, maybe you like cupping, maybe all of these roads lead to Rome, if you will, right? They're all going to give you some health benefit. Put together that stack. I mean, we do stacking at our office where we combine the services for specific conditions, but you can have this stack at home where this is what I do on the daily. This is what I do on the weekly. This is what I do monthly. This is what I do yearly. And you have these patterns and rhythms that help keep you running better with less stress. I mean, those are going to be, I think, what did I give you? 3 there? I'll cut it there.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.